All right, welcome everyone to the JumpX podcast episode. Is this episode number 41, Tom?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, episode number 41. We've got a special guest on today, Coach Moses. He's from New Zealand. Introduce yourself, man.
Like you said, my name's Moses. I'm from New Zealand, specifically in the South Island of New Zealand. If you don't know where that is, I'm basically like located right in the middle of the island in a place called Christchurch. Pretty much. I'm a strength and conditioning coach for professional basketball in my region, and I am also a dunker, and I'll say an aspiring pro dunker. That's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Oh, that's pretty sick, man. And you might just want to clarify because there's probably Americans listening to this, but obviously no offense to them, but like what New Zealand is and where it is as well.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So as I said, like probably a lot of people don't know where I'm from, but
Yeah.
just to clear the record, it's not part of Australia. Okay, it's
Yeah.
a completely different country. But yeah, it's kind of, well, depending on where you look at it, we're sort of like southeast from sort of where Australia is. So we're pretty close, sort of just above Antarctica. But yeah, we're just kind of a little island tucked away there, not too far away from, well, actually, we are pretty far away from everyone other than Aussie, but yeah.
Very beautiful place from
Yeah.
what I've
Yeah.
seen. I haven't been there, but very beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of a lot of greenery. We definitely pride ourselves on our nature. Yeah, farming's sort of like our main, I guess, industry over here too. So that might kind of help paint a picture of like what we look like. Some people, sorry, what the place looks like. Some people say that like New Zealand's similar, like in terms of like, I guess, the environment to like Iceland, like
Yeah,
just like that general look.
from what I've seen in terms of media, I can see that.
Mm.
Yeah. Like, just to clarify as well, that's where Lord of the Rings, like The Hobbit and stuff were filmed as well.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
New Zealand. So if you guys are wondering, want a good representation, I guess, you know, that's
Yeah,
part of
I should have started with that. Yeah, those are
it.
easy ways of seeing what this place looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool, man. Like you were saying, like, I guess off camera before how, like donkey's not really a huge thing, where you are, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So, I mean, first things first, like there are no pro dunkers, and secondly, like no one really does it like in isolation, as like a, I guess, a hobby or a primary sport. People dunk, I guess, as a product of just playing basketball. So that's kind of the state that it's in here.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I can kind of speak on parts of the community here that I do know, and like, admittedly, it is small, and I'm kind of doing my best to really try to, I guess, advocate for it and advertise it, just to get people to understand it. Like, it is something that you can do, and it is something that does exist like elsewhere.
That's it, man. That's it. Like, I think that's a good point to like touch on. Like, a lot of people like just aren't even aware that like it's a thing that you can just like do by itself. You know what I mean? A lot of
Exactly.
people think it's like a part of basketball, which it is, and that's how it originated, right? But a lot of people aren't aware that I could just do the dunking. Like we've
Mhm.
had athletes that we've trained for basketball. Like, I train a couple guys for basketball, and then like I invite them down to our dunk sessions, and then they get caught up in our dunk sessions, and then slowly over time they just transition into like just becoming a dunker. You know?
Yeah,
It's like,
honestly, that's the exact like same trend that happens over here. So
yeah,
like, I, not intentionally, but like, I think when these basketball players that I gather come and actually like experience a dunk session, like just literally a dunk session, like for the first
yeah,
time, it almost converts them because
yeah.
they don't realize, like, I guess, like how fun it is,
Mm.
just to like have a group of guys like all just around one hoop, like just going crazy, like trying to like yam everything, like do trick dunks, jump as high as you can, and like it's a sick experience, and it's a sick environment, like
Yeah.
especially from the outside.
Yeah, no, like 100%, 100%. Especially like if you're like seeing progress and you're progressing, you're hitting new dunks and stuff like that, it can quickly become addicting, you know? And I remember like, because Tom's the one that got me into dunking, you know? And like I was just a basketball player before I met Tom, and then I met Tom, and then I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna work on my vert for like a year or
Yeah.
6 months, and then I stopped playing basketball because like I wanted to like just optimize everything. And then a year turned into, or 6 months turned into a year, and then a year's turned into 2 years, and then 2 years has turned into three, so on, so on, so on. And I've just never gone back to playing basketball. I'm just a dunker now, you know? And I feel
That's
like,
crazy.
yeah, I feel like a lot of people start that way.
On that note, like what got you into it, Tom? I'm kind of curious to know that. Like what sort of like I guess inspired you to sort of I don't know take the first jump at it?
At dunking.
Yeah. Like was there someone like in Australia or was it like just online influence? Like what was it?
Oh, 100%. Do you know Stephen Sally?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Man, the legend. 100% Stephen Sally. Like, I saw one of his videos. Like, it was one of his ones he'd uploaded a couple of days ago. I was like, who is this guy? And then I went back and watched all of his old stuff from like 2017, all that 2016 or whatever it was. And I'm like, damn, this guy's my height. You know, he went from like not touching the ring where I am to dunking. And then it was kind of weird. Like, I preemptively stopped playing basketball for the second half of my year 12, like my
Right.
final year
So
of
you
school.
played basketball beforehand.
Yeah, yeah. So I was playing basketball and everything, and then just something inside me was like, I just want to focus on this. So I didn't play the last season. Everyone's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I was just like, "Oh, I'm doing it because I want to study," which was part of it. But I
Mm.
mean, realistically, it was more because I just wanted to go home, train, jump my home hoop, and improve dunking. But
Interesting. I feel like that's like I can speak for me personally. Like I feel like that's definitely like a pretty common one, right? Like, you've got, the big dogs like Isaiah and like Jordan, Kilgannon, and obviously, like Jordan Sutherland and all those other guys. And I think like probably a lot of people's careers just simply started from like seeing that one single sort of figure that all of a sudden you, I guess, idolize in that acute situation.
100%.
What
And
what got you into dunking,
Yes.
Moses?
So like I played basketball as well. And admittedly, like I didn't get into basketball because I wanted to dunk. Like I got into basketball because I thought it was like a fun sport and like a lot of my friends played it. My dad also played it at a quite high level. So there was like that influence. And then it was just like I remember I made my school's basketball team when I was quite young. Like I was how old was I? Maybe like 14 or something like that. And like everyone on the team was like 6'5" plus. Like I was literally like the shortest player on the team. I'm only 6 foot, like pretty much on the dot. And then the next shortest guy was like 6'5". So like all of them were dunking like pretty easily. And like at that time, like I kind of just like saw that and I was like, oh yeah. Like I didn't think about like the height as being a barrier. I just kind of went like, oh, okay. Like they're basketball players and they're dunking. I'm a basketball player. I guess I can dunk then. And it wasn't quite that simple, obviously, but yeah, I guess just like I sort of developed a mutual passion for dunking alongside basketball. Like I kind of thought that they were the same thing at the time. And then yeah, just like one summer, I decided like, okay, like I'm not playing any basketball. I might just like, get in the gym and like see if I can jump higher. And that kind of also started my career as well. Was I went on the internet and I looked up how to jump higher, and I kind of just went through every single article that I came across and blended this absolute shit pile of a program into my routine. But I mean, it worked. Like I did it. Like it had. Oh man, I wouldn't even want to see that thing on paper. I'd probably vomit. But um, it was just like I had sprints. Like I had split squats. I had like weighted jumps. Like I had like everything skipping, like all that, and then I actually completed that as like a circuit, which looking
Oh,
back
fuck.
now, I cringe so hard at. But I can literally think back to when I was doing it at the time. Like I was giving like like, well, at least perceptually, like I was giving like max effort. Like, even though like I would have been fatigued because I was going like, okay, sprint and then no rest, like straight into like a weighted jump. Like I was going 100 like the whole time. And then I guess just like, you know, novel stimulus, non-existent training age. Like it worked out for me in the end. And I got my first dunk when I was like 15 going on 16. So yeah,
That's
sorry, that
good,
story
dude.
way longer. That story took way longer than I thought it would. But yeah, pretty much it went really like kind of on and off throughout the rest of my career because basketball wasn't actually even my main sport. Like I played ice hockey. I was actually an ice hockey player for my country, like for most of the national teams here. So that was my main sport. Like I represented New Zealand in the under 16, under 18, and under 20 age group. And I also played for the regional, like professional men's team here as well. So that's why I say like dunking sort of fluctuated in terms of, you know, like whether I was into it or not, sort of throughout high school and like early university. But yeah, now I found myself here just fully bought into it and yeah, love it pretty much. So
Wait, so what year was that when you kind of fully committed to dunking?
uh oh man, I think it was 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. So bit of backstory, like I had like chronic like jumpers knee, like so bad. Like, and I don't even really know like how it happened, but looking back, I think it was probably a combination of the fact that like I stopped sort of dunking and playing basketball because I was, you know, focusing more on uni and other stuff. And then like I rushed back to it. And I guess that rapid load increase just like
Yeah.
really provoked me. And I guess I just ignored it over time as well. So there was like, I say that 2020 year was when I first started like, you know, properly committing to dunking, but I wasn't actually like able to dunk at least healthily, because that whole year was literally me like rehabbing my quad tendon. So I actually had quad tendinopathy as opposed to patella.
Okay.
I feel that.
Austin.
You had that as well?
Yeah, exact same. Yeah.
It's so weird, eh? Because like
Yeah.
I have not met too many people who have had it, and like looking at like a lot of like literature as well, it's like not like super documented either, which says to me that it's like not as obviously not as common as patella either. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
been quite a fascinating one, eh?
You find jumping more provoking in terms of pain or strength training
So
on your quad tendon?
so strength training actually is probably the most provocative thing. If I've got full range of motion squatting in there, because like as you know, with a quad tendon, like getting closer to that like 90 degrees of knee flexion is
Yeah.
the tendon gets provoked. So I've actually been able to get away with like dunking like pretty close to 100% of my ability with pretty bad like jumper's knee in that situation. But
Yeah.
that's what I've found. Have you found the same, or are you a bit different?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, obviously, there's a line with the jumping, but like I can get away with over jumping far more with my quad tendon than over stressing it through strength work. Like
Right.
strength work, I find provokes pain way more than jumping for me. And I think we were commenting on before, it's just those deeper levels of knee flexion, you know? And I find what I find most provoking actually is lunging on that back leg,
Yeah.
you know, because the quad's being lengthened on that back leg when you're lunging. So that lengthening, like I don't know, just something about it just stresses the tendon out for me. So I have to be like more careful, that sort of stuff. With jumping, like not necessarily. But it's interesting because I'm pretty sure how mine started was I was playing my basketball load was pretty heavy at the time, but then also I think I did something stupid one day, like got on the hack squat and with like Olympic weightlifting shoes and um like destroyed my quads. I think that's how it started for me, you know? Like my patella tendons seem to be made of steel. Like I've never had like typical jumper's knee. Like there's been times where in my basketball career where I played about 8 games of basketball on a weekend, I've never had jumper's knee.
Yeah. It's
I think,
interesting.
yeah.
I'm literally like the exact same. Like I had
Yeah.
jumpers like once, and that was when during that period where I'd just kind of got into like basketball and dunking when I was in like early high school, but have not ever even had a little amount of like tenderness or pain or anything in that area. So yeah, it's interesting. You're just patella pain, aren't you, Tom?
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
even know like what it would feel like. If that makes sense. I don't know.
How would you describe it? It's the same. It's just literally different location.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. It's just fucking annoying, to be honest.
Like, agree.
How about
Yeah.
What was that?
how about your Achilles? Is that ever played up?
Nah, so like I've like historically never had any Achilles issues. There was one time, and this was actually when I
Touch
had
wood, bro.
what's that?
Wood, bro. You don't want it. Touch wood.
Yeah, sorry, touch wood. I actually am right now.
Yeah.
Pause. Um, but yeah, like off the back of when I finished my rehab for my quad tendon, like when I was able to actually start training without any limitations, I started like incorporating like more extensive plyos like into my warm-ups and just like my general routine. And obviously that took the form of like hopping, which obviously stresses the Achilles tendon a lot more. And on my like left one, it started to get a bit of tendinopathy, but I kind of just like load managed, like got my calves stronger, and yeah, haven't had any issues with it.
Yeah, no, that's good, bro. I would argue that Achilles tendinopathy is far more annoying than knee because it's like every time you walk, you feel
Mm. Yeah, that
it.
and it's funny you say that because like with a lot of the basketball players that I work with, like I had to manage quite a few who had like chronic Achilles tendinopathy, and I guess the major difference between them and like say a basketball player or anyone for that matter that has a patella or quad tendon issue is like yeah, like you said, being on your feet is loading. So
Yeah.
you can't just like, oh let's reduce your plyometric or your playing volume by X amount. Like you actually have to consider like how much are they on their feet. And for a lot of our guys, like they do a lot of community coaching too. So like we actually had to like load manage like their entire life.
Yeah,
Wow.
I feel that, bro. I feel that. 'Cause sometimes my like girlfriend's like, "Oh, like let's go for a run, baby," and I'm like, "For fuck's sake!" Like I have to turn it down and all that and get her to understand. Like if I literally do that, I'm not gonna be able to jump for probably like 3 months.
Hey, well, look, man, if she understands, she's the right one.
Yeah, yeah, but that's actually a cool topic to touch on because that's something we haven't even talked about much. Like, have you looked into David Gray's stuff on that on Achilles rehab at
Uh,
all?
no, I haven't looked into it in too much depth, but I'm very familiar with his name, and I'm sure I've probably heard him. I'm sure he's been on like Joel Smith's Just Fly
Yeah,
podcast
yeah.
before. I've maybe heard something. Isn't he the guy who? Oh, I could be getting him totally mixed up. Isn't he the guy who has like the wedges or something? Like he, or am I getting him mixed up with someone else entirely? Maybe I'm thinking of
Uh,
Harry Ward.
I'm pretty sure it's uh, and uh, like he posts a lot of foot stuff,
Right.
and he's got an Achilles program out at the moment. And a big thing he talks about is getting the heel bone moving.
Yes.
And he found a lot of people that have chronic Achilles tendinopathy. Very often, their heel bone is just so stiff and doesn't move, which can put the Achilles more on stretch and lengthen that whole part of the lower leg more, which overloads the tendon unnecessarily. So a big thing I found that's helped me is getting my heel bone less stiff and moving more, and it kind of unloads that whole part of the lower leg more, which kind of helps with the whole concept of load management.
Yes. Yeah. No, and I actually didn't realize that that's like who it originated from. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the concept. I think it's, and don't quote me on this because I'm just going off of what I can recall, but I think it's particularly effective for like like insertional Achilles tendinopathy. So
Yeah,
like
100%. Yeah.
yeah, and I think like obviously that's like really targeting. I kind of view that as like almost, even though it's like a manual therapy method, like it's almost like changing, I guess it's changing the biomechanics essentially,
Yeah.
like you kind of
Yeah.
spoke about. And I think yeah, like freeing the calcaneus helps with like, oh, what was it? Yeah, it just helps, I guess, with just being able to pronate and roll through the foot, I guess, and just
Yeah. Yeah.
dispersing the forces, I guess,
Yeah.
more way. But yeah, anyway.
Do you find that when you're trying to load manage, some of your athletes, for example, you might find it real hard to actually try and convince them, oh, maybe you should take this game off or ease back on this training because, obviously they're going out to go get it and like get to a high level, but do you find it hard to try and convince them to, look at the larger picture?
Yeah, so I guess the short answer to that would be like it depends on who I'm working with.
Mm.
So I guess the main sort of groups that I work with, like I work with the professional men and women in my region, and then I also work with like high school development athletes. So like what I find is that at the professional level with the men and the women, because like these are paid athletes and we're working towards, a championship and then also just like long-term player development, we kind of have more control over actually being able to help load management, and they do buy into that. Because at the end of the day, like no one really likes playing through pain, unless obviously in most cases the enjoyment of the activity outweighs that pain, which is very applicable to guys like us. But
Yeah.
yeah, with the basketball players, like our whole performance staff are like very much on the same page when it comes to making those decisions. So like when we say like, oh, this player needs to reduce his loading here, like the player like does buy into that. However, with like the high school athletes I work with, because they play like for so many different teams and like they're training and they're playing like so often, it's actually not like load management is not actually an option for them. And especially because like a lot of them are fighting for like spots on their representative teams and obviously like exposure to get to that next level. So like what I found is like, I guess step one for the professionals is like, I'll try to just reduce their loading back in terms of volume to start with. With the high school kids, like I obviously like tend to suggest that at first, but what I found to be more practical and realistic in my space is like I just say, okay, well, you should be doing, like leg extension isometrics 2 to 3 times a day, every day for 5 sets of 45 seconds at 70% of MVC, right? Like, and a lot of them don't even know like about isometrics. So that's like a new concept to them. And like usually that does a pretty decent job at, I guess, helping them at least play to some decent level.
Like
Mhm.
survive, right? Just
Yeah.
survive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. And that's like definitely something we do as well and prescribe to like all our athletes as well is isometrics. Especially if they have tendon pain or have had an history of tendon pain, isometrics are so integral to addressing, that issue and, strengthening the tendon and ensuring, you know, things don't get out of hand.
Exactly.
Um, okay. So like getting back to like your journey in terms of like your progression in terms of your vertical jump, obviously you touched on a little bit earlier in terms of how you started and doing the circuit sort of training and all that sort of stuff. What have you found that has influenced your vertical jump the most and has helped you progress the most as an athlete in terms of jumping higher?
Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, I've tried to be pretty like holistic with my training just to make sure that like I haven't like left anything unturned. But I guess the key ones that really stand out to me, one has been just getting stronger, like generally, especially like on squatting variations. Like I've just found as a 2 foot jumper that when my relative squat strength goes up, like so does my vertical. So that's definitely been a big one for me. And then obviously, like, you know, strengthening through hip extension and plantar flexion
Yeah.
has also helped with that as well. But yeah, I guess aside from that, it's also just been like practicing jumping,
Yeah.
which yeah is not shocking. But yeah, I'm sure you guys know, like, it's quite surprising how many people don't realize that like that is one of like the simplest things that you should be doing, right? Like
Yeah.
practice the thing, like
Yeah. So many people are doing all the right things, plyometric strength work and stuff, but they're not going out and jumping at least once a week and having a dedicated jump session with max approach jumps, you know? And that's like the most important thing. That's the thing that like I'd rather someone if they're healthy, like skip like a strength session than their jump session. Otherwise, there's no point, you know? So obviously if they're not healthy, it's a different story, but you know, it's just like that just needs to be the priority, you know, like everything else isn't going to be as effective unless you're doing that, you know, each week and doing
yeah,
it with intent and purpose and actually focusing on things and trying to get better at certain
exactly.
things.
Yeah,
So
and like anecdotally, like that was obviously my first like observation, because I guess like during that period of time that where I said that I wasn't really that focused on dunking, like I was still like lifting a lot and I was getting quite strong.
yeah,
Um, but when I like obviously rushed back to dunking again, like I wasn't jumping great. And on top
yeah,
of that, I had crippling knee pain. So
yeah,
like, you know, it just goes to show like you've got to do the thing to get better at the thing, and everything else is a supplement to that.
literally, literally. And that's just where like you got to prioritize your training to ensure you can do the thing as well. You know, like a thing I constantly think about in my head, and a thing we constantly tell our athletes as well, is if doing this part of your training is going to get you hurt and you think it's going to not allow you to get the most out of your jump session when ever your jump session is, then you need to like, we need to change it or we need to, um, you know, like address that. So then it's like essentially not going to affect that jump session, you know, like so you can stay healthy long term and not get injured.
Exactly.
Oh, I got two questions. They kind of relate. For the first question is, how old are you right now?
I'm 24.
24. Okay. So you were like 2021 when you started your jump journey?
Yeah.
So did
Yeah.
you have a stage where you were jumping every day? Because a lot of dunking athletes did go through that stage, whether that be low rim or 10 foot, whatever. Did you have that stage?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because like I didn't start like, I guess, dunk training, if I go from day one, until probably a little bit later than most people. Well, I mean, you know, everyone's different, but I say that from the perspective of like you said, the dunkers who are, you know, the best in the world now, who did all those low room sessions when they were super, super young. But no, so I didn't do that. And that's actually my biggest regret, because like I genuinely think that I would have been so much better, like exponentially better, if I had gone through that phase. But yeah, instead, like I think I started too late, to the point where I had reached a level of physical maturity where like, and I'm sure you've heard these conversations before from others, about, I guess, like jumping every day and how that changes as you get older. But I was at a point of like physical maturity where the outputs were enough to be quite provocative on my body, right? Like, because when
Yeah,
you're however old you were, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I mean, unless you're a genetic freak, like you're not jumping that high. So that's why you can afford to do that so much. But
exactly.
yeah, when I started, like, I mean, I won't say I was jumping high, but at the time, like it was high enough to, yeah, be provocative, as I said. So, no, I kind of skipped
Yeah.
that part. Like, I think, yeah, at most I'd dunk like maybe, or try to dunk maybe like 3, 4, 5 times at the end of basketball practice, like a typical basketball player would do, you know. But no, unfortunately, now I'm at the point where like probably if I'm healthy, I could do 3 sessions a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. but most of the time it's 2.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel you on that point, dude. I didn't go through that phase of like jumping every day or jumping super start when I was 22. So like I was just, you know, the forces I was producing and all that sort of stuff at that point, I just couldn't get away with jumping that regularly because my body just doesn't allow it. But the interesting thing I found is those guys that start really young, like Tom and like, you know, you hear about like Isaiah and like Jordan Coogan, all the best guys, all the best guys that I see that are the best at jumping, they all went through that phase of like jumping every day. And from what I've seen, is for those guys, they're the ones that get the most out of just purely getting stronger. The strength work tends to translate far better to those guys than say someone like myself or other guys we train on JumpX that don't have that history. So that's where over the years I've come to realize that for those guys that don't have that history of jumping, that's where doing the jumping, doing the plyometrics, doing the higher velocity movements that put more emphasis on the stretch shortening cycle, those things are more important for those athletes. They say someone like Tom, where like if he just gets his back squat up, like fuck yeah, he's gonna jump higher, you know?
Lots of yeah.
So I don't know
100%.
if that's something you've kind of like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that's actually a really like interesting point because I've had these conversations with like a few work colleagues and actually like more recently like some professors who have sort of talked about similar concepts in other sports.
Yeah,
Um, I guess a good example is a colleague was talking about this friend of his who was doing research on like cricket players and basically like I think it was like determinants of like basically top fast bowling performance. And it was basically like the ones who had done like loads and loads and loads of bowling and optimized the skill at a young age were able to transfer their general abilities, like their
yeah,
strength, their their reactive strength index, like markers like that, to their bowling a lot better. So
yeah,
yeah, I think I can't really like sit here and give you an accurate answer on like I guess what the mechanisms are behind that, but like yeah, it just goes to show like from I guess a long-term periodization perspective, like it seems to really pay off when you focus on optimizing the motor pattern and I guess your general mechanics, and then tapping into those other things later on, which again like will supplement it.
yeah,
And I think like off the back of what you said about like Tom's jump is going to go up if his squat goes up without necessarily needing to jump. Like I think some people almost jump in a way that's been molded from their strength work,
yeah,
whereas what we're talking about right now, like we're talking about athletes who, I mean, yeah, I guess yeah, develop the pattern and then just transferred their abilities. So like I'm speaking from like my own mechanics. Like my mechanics are by definition terrible. Like I've got the short penultimate. Like I don't have a low center of mass coming into my takeoff. I don't have a steep block foot. Like I don't have any of that. Like I just run up and pretty much just do a standing vertical jump. But I guess that's probably just the motor pattern that I've adopted from the strength work that I decided to do before optimizing the pattern or focusing on the pattern, if I've made sense.
Yeah.
that's very interesting, man. It's just such an interesting topic because, like, for myself, like, I've noticed that for me, getting stronger definitely helps me jump higher, but it only helps me as long as my jump volume is high at the same time and my sprint and plyometric volume is high at the same time. So then that strength work actually translates properly. If those volumes for me aren't high enough, but I'm getting stronger, then that strength actually doesn't translate properly for me into my vertical jump. And looking back for myself and my brother who has very similar genetics to me, who I'm training at the moment, it's the exact same thing for him. Like if like for like doing plyometrics, sprinting, jumping, all that sort of stuff, when those volumes are highest in terms of how much I'm jumping per week, how much I'm sprinting per week, how many like I guess quick ground contacts I'm getting a week, when those things are highest, that's when I'm jumping my best. And that's a trend I've started to notice with my brother as well. Because where there's typical like tall, white guys that just have no athletic gene in their body, just literally no bounce. Like my brother was 6'6" and couldn't dunk,
Wow.
like barely grabbing the rim, right? But as soon as I've started to up his sprint volume, his jumping volume, his plyometric volume, the verse just increasing every week. He's getting better and better and better. And we have a few guys like that on JumpX that have that in that same sort of situation, exact same thing.
Brad.
Exact same thing. As soon as we start to up that side of things, in terms of the higher velocity movements that put more emphasis on the stretch shortening cycle, like the verse just go up and up and up, and the strength work is actually starting to translate properly. Whereas other guys like Tom, and we got other guys like we'll use names Hack, and this we got this new guy, James. They're naturally kind of quick guys. Yeah, they're naturally kind of quick guys, and you watch them jump, and they get off the ground quick, but they're just not jumping that high, purely because they're just not producing enough force in that time frame, right? So just getting those guys stronger, like their verse is just skyrocketing, right? And it's just so interesting how everyone's just so different.
Yeah. Yeah. And like it's interesting that you bring like this topic up as well, because I might not have mentioned to you over conversation previously, Tom, but I'm actually looking at going on to doing further study next year. And right now I'm actually looking at potentially doing some research on like elements of jump performance in terms of mechanisms for why certain people respond better to certain stimuli over others, but like really trying to like look at the whole picture. So like, why do some people respond better to strength work? Like, why do some people respond better to plyos and blah, blah, blah. And like really trying to like unpack it. And I think, there's just so many things in that area that we don't fully understand or know about yet. And I think like, once someone does decide to really like peel it back, like I think like training for, I mean, not even just jumping higher, but for getting just more elastic or whatever in general, like I think is going to become so much better, because like we're just going to understand so much more about like individualization of training.
Yeah. Wait, you mentioned you went to uni before at the start of the podcast. What was that for?
So I attended the University of Canterbury, which is basically in the city where I'm from. And I did my bachelor's degree in sports coaching. So I did that from 2018 to 2020. And then that following year, I did my master's degree in sports science at the same university. And then finished up my dissertation in February of 2021. No, 2022. Yeah, 2022.
Recently, okay.
Yeah. So I'm about 2 years out of uni.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you've got what's your background? You guys both have studied in sports science or something, haven't you? Or
I did sports science from 2019 to 2022.
oh yeah, where did you go? Like, where did you study? Were you at Edith Cowan or were you somewhere else?
Curtin.
Whereabouts?
Curtin University.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I only know Edith Cowan. Like I just hear.
I was like, how do you know Edith Cowan? What the fuck?
Oh look, I can't say too much, but I know Edith Cowan.
Okay. And Austin?
Yeah, I only know Edith Cowan.
Hi.
I was gonna say explain to people like what's your background and experiences.
I've been a trainer since late 2018. I guess that's how many years now?
5.
Yeah, 5.
That's kind of
Huh?
that's crazy that 2018 was 5 years ago.
Yeah, so I've been a trainer for 5. Huh?
When did that happen?
Yeah.
You're right. It's like 2020 was yesterday.
It's fucked.
Yeah, so I've been a trainer for 5 years. And I don't have a sports science degree. But I'm accredited with ASCA.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the Australian S&C certification, right?
Yeah.
Nice. I've heard really good things about that.
Yeah, it was pretty solid. It's pretty solid, and I had a good mentor helping me through that as well. So yeah,
Nice. So much knowledge on one video chat.
yeah, no, it's cool. That's why I thought a lot of people would get a lot of value from this, man. So like there's a few other topics that I think are kind of hot topics, I guess, in our industry that I really want to touch on that I think would be super interesting. Um, and this is a bit of a hot topic at the moment. And I guess this is something I've first seen from Daniel Bark, Jump Science, right, on Instagram.
Yeah.
And the question is traditional power work really necessary in the form of Olympic lifting, weighted jumps, those middle of the ground, sort of things on the force velocity curve?
You know what's really funny is that like I knew you were gonna bring this topic up because like I totally agree. It is such a hot topic.
Yeah, yeah. Because I've experimented with this a lot. So
Yeah, so I guess I'll talk about it from like my anecdotal experiences with that type of training first, and then like I'll try to diverge into I guess as much literature in that area as possible and like share my interpretations of it. But I didn't start adding, I'll use Olympic lifting as my primary example. But I didn't start Olympic lifting until like not even 2 years ago. So I haven't been doing it for very long. I only somewhat recently added it to my routine. And um, obviously, I wasn't like that competent with it where I could really produce a lot of outputs. So initially, as you'd expect, I didn't see a lot of transfer to my jumping. However, when I got to the point where like I was quite competent and like able to actually like move it with max intent and there was no like learning curve issues, and of course the loading started to push up as well. Like I can't quite pinpoint it to that because I was obviously still doing so many of my other types of training, but I definitely saw some really, really, really positive transfer to my jumping ability. And if I'm going to isolate part of it, like I'm not even just talking about like, say, my concentric velocity, like on the way up with my jump. Like I'm even talking about like with reference to, I guess, let's say the catch phase of a clean or a snatch, in relation to when you take your penultimate step and you plant and you're having to apply braking force and redirect. Like I feel like that's been one of the biggest parts where I've seen that transfer of that type of training. However, in saying that, I understand that that's more the exercise than like the sort of power stimulus that you're talking about. But even with like loaded jumps, what I've found is, and this actually will help me tie in the literature as well, is like it's kind of helped me bring my efficiency up in terms of what is the gap between my rate of force development and my max force production. So I feel like it's sort of been training in that middle ground has allowed me to like realize how much of my max force I can bring into my jump if I'm making myself clear.
yeah, well, because the Olympic lifts, like it's around the same time frame as like a 2 foot approach jump, you know, the time to
Yeah.
produce. So
Yeah. And like it is in the literature classified as like a special strength exercise traditionally. So with that in mind, it's traditionally saved in those kind of SPP blocks of training to realize, you know, your capabilities or your more general force producing capabilities that you built in previous blocks or simultaneously or whatever. But in terms of, I guess, chasing higher wattages, um, I'm probably not that convinced by it if you're looking to jump higher. Although, in saying that, I think that although producing higher wattages, in my opinion, won't necessarily elicit greater jump heights, I think that it may elicit better jump heights purely because you have like an objective measure of intent that's kind of holding you accountable, if that makes sense. So like, you know, if that your wattage is higher, then you put more work in over that time period, right? So that's kind of how I view it from.
Also, yeah. Go on, go on, go on.
Oh, sorry, that was pretty much it.
Oh yeah, yeah. But also like moving like a weight faster, the same weight faster on an Olympic lift. That's a form of getting stronger too.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
exactly. It's
fast
just a
speed.
different velocity, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it can certainly be like interpreted in a lot of different ways. And like, I'm definitely curious to hear like what you guys think. Admittedly, it's still one that like I'm trying to understand better, and I certainly change my opinion on it a lot when I come across like new perspectives like Daniel's and
Yeah.
um, other information. But
I think
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I think he's right in the sense that is it necessary? Like, no. Can it be beneficial? I think absolutely. But also it can also be person dependent as well. Like I know Tom, like from your own personal experience, you know, including power work, like power cleans and stuff like that in your training, you
Mhm.
feel your vertical jump is what's helped you a lot when you've done that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know why necessarily the reason is. It's very hard to pinpoint, like you were saying
Yeah.
before. But I will say, just for example, my max power clean right now is 120 kilo. If that suddenly was 140, if I just went like just snap my fingers, it's 140 now. I weigh the same, my squat's the same, whatever. I guarantee you tomorrow, when I'm jumping, I will jump higher.
see that's so now we're kind of opening up another really interesting topic, which I mean, yeah, I'm sure we can get to it, and I'm sure you probably got it down there, but I guess this raises the question as well of like how strong is strong enough?
Yeah, no.
That's
Oh
crazy,
yeah,
bro. You
fuck.
literally guessed it.
Bro, do you know what I hate?
What?
I hate it when coaches are like, oh no, we don't need to get you stronger. There's diminishing returns of strength work.
Yeah, yeah. Don't even get me
I hate
started.
that. I hate that, bro. I hate that because I just think in my head, when you're getting to that elite level, when you're jumping like 48 inches, well, no fucking shit. There's going to be diminishing returns of everything you do. You know?
Yeah, I actually I had a conversation with one of my mentors about this recently. And I get like what the where I stand on it is like you can't like you can't reach that. Like I don't think many people reach their true max relative strength potential, because that is an endless pursuit, right?
Mhm.
Like, you know, if you're, I don't know, doing 2.5 times body weight on a back squat or something like that, and like you're trying to get to, you know, 3 times or whatever, of course you're already at an elite level of strength, right? So to be able to go from 2.5 to 3 times body weight is not going to be as simple or as timely as you going from 1.5 to 2 times body weight. So it's just totally different. I think in saying that, like I definitely agree with the perspective of, you know, like continuing to always chase like max strength or max relative strength. But I think the argument that people, I guess, forget to consider in this situation is like people who don't get better when they increase their squat, let's say, for example, like there are just so many variables you have to consider in that. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we're looking at one particular exercise, right? Like if you're looking at one exercise, like of course that's going to be one of the main limiting factors of this whole argument, right? It's about getting generally strong. It's not just about one particular movement. All the literature is so just like, oh, once you've hit 2 times body weight back squat, it's done. You don't need to strength train anymore. Like you need to do power work. Okay, what's your front squat like? What's your hip thrust like? What's your deadlift like? What is your calf raise like? What is your power clean like? And then all of a sudden, it opens up an entirely different perspective on the whole argument. And the other side of that too is that even in situations where I've come across athletes who are generally strong to an adequate level across all of those kind of key lifts, for me, it's just like, okay, well, what does the rest of your programming look like? Because
Yeah.
like the adaptations as well from going from 2.5 to 3 times body weight on a squat is going to probably be different to the adaptations that took you from 1.5 to 2. Are you getting negative morphological changes? Like changes in pennation angle, fiber type? Like there's so many of those things which can get mitigated if you just look at your training holistically. Like that's what I think about the topic.
I was going to add something. Say you're like, because we're all jumping athletes here. I'd argue if you're a jumping athlete, I don't think at any point you're ever going to hit your like genetic max strength level, because strength is never your main focus. Like you're jumping, sprinting, whatever. You're not spending 5 days a week strength training like an ollie lifter, power lifter, whatever. So I don't think you can actually hit that level.
Exactly. And like it might just be like I do acknowledge that there could be some personal bias when it comes to this opinion I have. I am a strength and conditioning coach at the end of the day. And obviously my experiences have been I've seen positive transfer from getting stronger to my performance. But when you do look at it and you do think critically about it, like it's hard to totally write it off, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's gonna be a little bit different as well. Like speaking from like Tom's perspective, like how much do you back squat right now, Tom? Like what's your max? 190?
190 like without knee sleeves, yeah.
And how many times body weight is that? Because you weigh 75, so
Yeah, however many that is. I can tell you exactly.
Yeah, what is that? That's like
It's not like that insane. It's only 2.6. Like it's not
yeah,
outrageous.
okay. So have you seen positive effects on your vertical from getting your back squat stronger even after 2 times body weight?
And when I was 2 times, well, that's 150. When I was squatting 150, I can't even remember when that would have been, like fucking 2020. And I hadn't, no, I didn't, had I East Bay by then? I don't even know. But I was probably only jumping like 41, 42 at best.
Yeah.
So from 2 to 2.6, how much do you reckon I've gained? Like 4 or 5 inches? 45, 46 now?
Well, you get your head above the ring and you're 5'11".
Yeah. Well, maybe this is another debate. Hey,
What's Tom doing?
like 46, 47 on my best day. Austin's like, oh, that jumps to 49. I'm like, nah, no way.
and then everyone in the comments will just be like, nah, that's 30, bro, can't dunk angles.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
And
but it's even like someone like Isaiah Rivera, right? Like he's tested 50, right? But then you see his height checks. Obviously, height checks inflated, right? A little bit. But he's like getting his fucking neck at the rim on a 10-foot rim. Like
that's
dunking last year. And like apparently that's estimated like 53, 4 inch, you know? But that's the thing, that's where everyone always tests lower on a vertex.
yeah.
Yeah. And something that I actually wanted to talk with you guys about, because I think I've seen you guys talk about this before in like one of the videos that I saw you guys post, but it was like just talking about, I guess, like the intent behind like throwing self lobs on dunks versus like
Yeah.
off dribble, even dare I say it, comparing how high you jump on a self lob dunk versus on a vertic. Because I don't know like what you guys have experienced, like if you obviously do that a lot. But I feel like I've probably jumped my highest on like self lob dunks versus on a vertic. I have no way of like proving it, but just sensationally, and even just like looking at like the distance between where I am at my peak jump height and the ground, I'm like, okay, like I wish that there was a vertex here, but I understand that that's like just not how it works. So yeah, like what have you guys found like personally?
Personally for me, I find this is why I do backboard dunks a lot, because I find I jump higher doing backboard dunks because it naturally encourages me to get off the ground quicker. and I guess I get a little bit more upright. So I guess I get better jump mechanics when I throw it off backboard, like for myself personally, they work better for like myself. So like the ground contact time's quicker, and I guess posturally, like I'm a little bit in a better position. So I tend to like jump higher, like lobbing it higher off the backboard because it encouraged me to get off the ground quicker and all that. Then like a self lob. But in saying that, that might just be because I haven't practiced self lobs as much. You know, there's that variable, but like I definitely like jump higher. I feel like you were saying sensationally in the midst of a dunk session than testing on a vertex. You know, I don't know. Like it's because I feel like testing on a vertex is a whole separate skill in
100%. Yeah,
itself.
I totally agree.
So if you're not like testing, I guess, regularly on a vertex and using a vertex regularly, then I feel like yeah, it's a somewhat accurate measure of your vertical, but is it the best representation of like your potential? Like maybe not if you're not practicing that skill of
Mm.
testing a vertex regularly enough, you know?
It's like, for example, say you did lots of power cleans at the start of the year, and then you stop doing them for a little bit, and you do them come like October, November. So you've waited like a good 8 months to hit power cleans again. Say your sprints have gone way quicker, your back squat's gone up, you're jumping higher. You might actually test lower 1 RM in the power clean, but it's because you're rusty on the actual skill itself. Doesn't mean your power output's any lower. And that's like the same thing with the Vertec.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And like, I think as well, I was going to raise the point of like, when it comes to like jumping high, and I kind of got to understand like more of like the underpinnings of it by like the research that I did when I was doing my postgrad. But I kind of looked at like the effect of like, I guess, different focuses of attention when it came to jumping. This was in the form of like verbal cues, but I mean, I'll talk about what I'm kind of getting at here is like, if you're like aiming for an overhead target, right, versus just like focusing on effort, like you're going to have totally different outcomes, right? So jumping up and grabbing a ball, like you're motivated by wanting to jump up and like try to grab that thing that is away from you. Like that is like your point of reference. Whereas like, if someone just says like, oh yeah, like go in and like jump as high as you can, which I mean like might be a little bit different for like height checks per se, but like if you were to contrast the two, like I feel like you're always going to jump higher from that having that external focus. And like a lot of research like proves that as well. Um
Would you say it's because it's more emotionally driven as well, dunking?
Yeah, I think so. And like, I think it also helps differentiate between like scores that you get, or sorry, heights that you reach on like a dunk versus, testing on a vertex. Because I think, you're motivated to do both. But like you said, there's definitely more of like like an emotional like drive part of it. Because you're almost like, I don't know, getting a little bit like artistic here, but you're like expressing yourself, like it is creative expression, right? Like that's what dunking is.
That's so interesting. That just makes me think, like, I know Tom, you've experienced this, but I know I've been my strongest in the gym, like after like a breakup or something like that, because it had an extra emotional drive,
Mm.
and it's like I don't know, it's just something I just thought of, like just completely off the top of my head right now. I don't know how much validity there is in what I'm saying right now, but like I don't know. That's where I'm kind of thinking, would that also play a component in what you're talking about in terms of dunking?
Yeah, yeah,
Like when you're saying it being more emotionally driven, maybe that's an aspect behind it.
absolutely. Like, I mean, from like a neurotransmitter perspective, like, and I'm sure that it probably is very dependent on timing, right? But if we were to go off of like your breakup example, like probably wouldn't, I mean, I haven't tried this obviously, but I think like you're probably, obviously when you get, let's say you've been broken up with, right? Like you had this huge like emotional dip of like, man, I'm so sad and angry and emotional. And it's like to the point, I guess, where depending on how attached you were and how it all went down, like you can't do anything. Like you're not thinking about anything. Like you're not hungry. Like, you know what I mean? Like it ruins
Yeah.
everything. All of a sudden, it like over time, you start to like regulate, and then you're like processing it all and overcoming it all. And then you end up kind of writing that like, oh, okay, like I can use this energy now, or sorry, I can use this trauma now. And yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. And like I think it's probably quite similar with like getting injured as well. Like, man, I don't know about you guys, but like doesn't matter what type of injury it is, like you're always, for me personally, gonna like react the same way. Like as soon as it happens, you're just like, oh, like the world is crashing down. Like, you know, I can't do this, like blah blah blah. And like that affects your performance. Like it's stress, right? Like your cortisol will be up. I'm sure there'll be a whole bunch of other factors too, but a good example today is like I had a kid last week with one of the high school groups I worked with, and he broke his foot during the regional semifinals, and his team lost. And prior to that, he actually fully fractured his tibia clean in half about a year before that on his other leg. So you can imagine like the frustration that he was going through, like following that. And when I had him in the gym, like I just had him do this like pretty much like a modified like single leg jumping exercise that he was able to do, and we were able to measure it. And then today I had him in, which is exactly a week later, and he's kind of like since processed it all and like starting to be more forward thinking and like actually going, oh, okay, nah, this isn't like a bad thing that's happened to me. Like this is an opportunity. And when I had him do the jump, like I can't even begin to describe the exponential increase in his performance. Like it was like 15 centimeters more on this particular jump that I had him do. And I mean, that could have just been down to readiness or whatever, but like you could see it straight away. Like when he came in, like his whole demeanor was totally different between sessions. So yeah, like I think that's probably a big part of it.
You know, that just makes me think of another like interesting topic. Like some of my best jump sessions have been when I'm like not like I'm not supposed to be as physically ready. But
Yes.
but for some reason I'm extra motivated to dunk, and I'm just going in there with the mentality I'm gonna fucking destroy this rim, right? And I end up having a really good session, even though like I'm in a fucking like ball of fucking fatigue. And I think that has a huge effect on performance in terms of, you know, your dunk sessions as well. Right? If you're going to the dunk session, oh, I'm gonna dunk bad, I don't really feel like jumping, blah 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 blah. That's probably what's gonna happen. But if you're going in there with the opposite mentality, you know, that's gonna influence your performance quite a lot. And this is something Tom tells me a lot, and he tells all the people around us a lot. You know, to have that sort of expectation. I think it's something Tom does really well as well.
Yeah, we always say to our like athletes on JumpX, we always say like don't write yourself off, sort of thing. Like don't go into the session, write yourself off, and be like, you know, I'm gonna jump bad because you know I had one more set than I did last week, and I in theory should be fatigued. Like you never know. There's so many layers to fatigue that you can't even comprehend sometimes.
But
So
maybe just even like shifting your perspective and thinking, oh, I had one extra set this week, instead of thinking, I want to be extra fatigued, I'm probably not going to jump well on Saturday. Like shifting that into the perspective of, oh, I had one extra set this week. You know, that probably means I'm going to be stronger, and I'm going to be jumping higher. You know?
even if you are having a bad session, I think it's important to be like, you know, make this the best bad session that I've had. So say on a good day you can hit a windmill 5 out of 10 times, and you're struggling to hit a windmill on that day. Your new goal should be just to get like one windmill on this bad day. Because if you can do that, that's still like some level of progress, I think.
Because post dunk session depression is real.
Oh man. So I like had never like properly experienced that to like the fullest extent until I like won my first dunk contest and like had this like absolute like high, right? Like for the entire day and even the next day. And then like admittedly, like I had a session like back home with the boys like about a week later, and like that was still a good session because I was like in a good state. But then as soon as like a bad session rolled around after that, I was like, damn, like, do I even like this anymore? Like, like it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And like I hear guys talk about that from like after dunk camp because like
Yeah.
obviously you guys both went to it this year, and like I heard that term thrown around like post like dunk depression or post dunk camp depression, and like I feel like I can't even begin to fathom what that would be like because that's like to me that's like the best dunk session of your life on steroids turned into like I mean how many days is it, like 4 days or 5 days or something?
But yeah, it's Monday to Thursday, 4 days.
Oh, oh my goodness.
And there's some dudes that go there and jump every day.
Yeah, see, that's crazy. Like, just the yeah, for guys like this, like us, who love like this so much, being in that environment and is just like pinnacle. Even just stepping away from it and not necessarily entering a bad situation, I'm sure. I mean, shit, you guys can talk about it.
Yeah. We like, man, we're like so fortunate because we almost have like a similar environment every Saturday here, you know? And it's like, I always talk to Tom about this. I'm like, bro, it always jumps so much worse like midweek versus a Saturday because midweek we don't have that same environment. But I always draw it down to fatigue because it's like, oh yeah, I always have my hardest session on a Monday, strength work, blah, blah, blah. But also like not having an environment, I think would definitely also be a factor contributing to that as well, like 100%.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I can speak from experience on that as well. Like, I'm sure you can imagine how hard it is out here with the fact that not many guys like do it at all. So yeah, like it's the same thing like Saturdays, but it's not every Saturday. Like
yeah,
probably once every month or two, we get probably 2/3 or half of what you guys get on a Saturday from what I've seen.
Okay.
And then the rest of it is just like might be two of us, might be three of us. Four or more is a luxury here, just to like paint a bit of a picture as to like what it's like.
yeah, that's how we started as well. Like I started dunking with Tom in 2020.
Yep.
Was it? Yeah, I started dunking with Tom in 2020, and it was like only like three or four of us as well, right? And then slowly since then, it's just growing more and more and more and more to the point where it is now, where we've had to like make the sessions exclusive to like our athletes only because otherwise it's just far too many people.
Bro, I remember that there was
Yeah.
one. There was literally like 30 people on the court.
Yeah, and you got pissed and it's so many people.
It's crazy.
What? I'm not even like exaggerating though. Like, think of the 3-point line. It was just packed with people on like each corner. Like,
Uh, so, but like it didn't start like that. So like I guess the point I'm getting to is like we started exactly where you are right now, and um, you can absolutely grow something like that in New Zealand, if it's like consistent enough and all that, it can, because like like we talked about at the start of this podcast, like it starts off slow and then people just slowly get drawn in more and more and more and more and more. Obviously that's not gonna happen to everyone, but you know, so like a lot of people go, oh, like we wish, we had what you guys have in Perth, but you can. You just give it enough time and do it frequently enough, and you absolutely can. Like in Melbourne, same things happened. Exact same things happened. Like there's a Melbourne dunk squad now. Like we train a couple guys from that dunk squad. Like they literally have like an Instagram and like Melbourne dunk squad, everything like that. That only started with like three of them. Like, it was like AP Bouncy, Liam Broad and Stevie.
Steve. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
now
Dan,
growing.
yeah. And then I think Dan was like the next one to join.
Yeah,
yeah, tons of guys.
But that's slowly growing over the years too. So that's growing from like 3 people to like 4 to 5. Like we train over in Melbourne. We're telling them, look, there's a dunk squad over in Melbourne. You got to go join them. Because it's like it's gonna be the best environment for you to improve, and you're gonna improve faster that way if you go dunk with them.
Oh
You,
yeah.
like so you're like at that you're like at that starting point, bro. You're like at the you're like at the first chapter, bro. You can like definitely really grow something, you know?
Yeah, and that's definitely like my vision for it all. Because like, I mean, I'll be honest, like I would love to make a career like out of just training jumpers and dunkers, but like that's not realistic at this point in time yet. So I only ended up in basketball because like my knowledge was on how to help people jump higher and how to deal with tendon pain. And funnily enough, those things are important or relevant to basketball. So like, yeah, I kind of just ended up in that environment because of that. But yeah, in saying that, like, yeah, the session started off with like just me, and then like one of my friends came along, and it kind of almost like turned into like more just like me and like another person. And then all of a sudden we just had this random day where we got everyone together, and then all of a sudden guys were hitting dunks they'd never even done before, and guys were jumping higher, and it was like, okay, hold on a minute. So yeah, it's powerful, man. Like the environment really like changes everything. So yeah, I mean, I'm hoping we can kickstart it, and it's awesome to see like obviously what you guys are doing your way, and obviously prior to that, what guys are doing overseas as well. Just to I guess see what's worked and try to mimic that, I guess. But I almost put our own spin on it.
Well,
It's
the
cool.
Americans have started doing that. Have you seen? They have like dunk squads now. They have like Minnesota dunk squad, friggin' like social dunkers. Like this year, all of a sudden, everyone's just started their own dunk squad. You know,
I mean,
so
social media is obviously really like driven that, but
you could start something you could start something and just call it New Zealand Dunk Squad, and then just put it out on social media. Who wants to be a part of this? You know, and then you could really start something, bro, and be a pioneer there. You know, and
yeah,
like maybe there's not a market for that right now, but you can create one, dude. You can absolutely create one. You can do it. You know.
I definitely want to. Like, I mean, right now we've got like our group, and we called ourselves. It's a rip off of obviously an existing name, but it's like just like a messenger like chat, like group chat, and we just
Yeah.
called ourselves like. So I live in Canterbury. That's like the region. We just called ourselves like the Canterbury Flight Brothers, which is literally just like ripping off Team Flight Brothers. But yeah, we thought about making an Instagram, but I mean, now that you mentioned like New Zealand, like, and obviously me knowing how like small the community is, but how much potential there could be, like, I think, yeah, definitely that would be the next step to like fully commit to. But I guess, and it might sound selfish, but the way that I kind of see it is like, I'm trying to, I guess, promote it through myself more so first, because, like, I mean, if I'm going to take, let's take Isaiah for example, right? Like he marketed himself, and then along came John, and obviously John marketed himself, and then they joined forces, and then now look at them, And I guess it's similar for you two, right? With JumpX, like you guys, started were your own brand, and then you guys joined with that following, I'm assuming, and then it just you know exploded from there.
Yeah, I feel like we're almost at the stage of, you remember the Florida dunk squad from like 2017, 2016, 2017? Did you ever watch their videos? It was like Steven, CJ, Isaiah, um,
Yeah,
and we're almost at the point where I remember they had this massive session, and they like flew out Jordan Kilgannon, and all these other guys came. It would be like if Austin and I would have fly to Melbourne, you would have come to Melbourne as well, and then we joined up with MDS, and we all just had like the most insane dunk session ever. Here's Australia, yeah, be fucking insane.
bro, I'm shivering thinking about that. That would be like crazy.
Wait, bro, imagine having like Brody Stevens there, like Korean dunkers,
Oh,
and AP Bouncy back there, and then you Tom there, and then Bro, fuck, you would have to have
All
like
on one court.
Yo, they would like if if only dunking was like, I mean, I don't know, you probably could, but imagine if like dunking could somehow be turned into like a team sport, right? Where like, I don't know, everyone, you form your team together and like everyone's accumulating points in the same way that like you would with an individual dunk contest. And you could have like,
you mean team dunk contests.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like,
That's what I was thinking about. I thought about this because when I saw these dunk squads come up in America, I'm like, man, it'd be fucking awesome to see like dunk squad versus dunk squad and have like a dunk competition. And then obviously like the team that has the best combined score, bringing wins and like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that'd be cool. Like I feel like it's a really good idea.
that would be so doable too. And I feel like, I mean, obviously dunking's still got like a little way to go in terms of being like formalized as a sport, right? But like, I feel like so many people are hopping on the bandwagon now that it's probably almost gonna. I mean, I don't know. I'm speculating, but it's probably gonna have to turn into that type of format because, like, so many people are getting into it, right? And so many people want to do it at a high level. I mean, not everyone, but that's just kind of what I've seen.
Yeah, well, it's arguably the most fun part of basketball, you know? You ask someone, would they rather break someone's ankles or dunk on someone? Like, I think it depends on the person, but I feel like if most people could dunk, they would rather dunk on someone than break someone's ankles.
Anyone who says they would rather break someone's ankles than posterize someone is lying and is also less than 5'7".
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Because even back when I played basketball, if I got asked that question, I would definitely, but yeah, I'd rather dunk on someone, you know?
Yeah,
So, because it's like, obviously, like, even in the NBA, right? Like, if you see an NBA player break another NBA player's ankles, it's like that's a cool moment, right? But it's not as wow and spectacular as like, John Morant, dunking on Dwight Howard or something,
exactly.
you know?
Exactly. It's just so much more to it. Like it's like, I don't know, like they're both obviously very like different, but it's just when you've got like the defender coming up and then the guy with the ball just trying to yam it on you, it's just like two forces just like colliding, and then the rim, you just blink, and then all of a sudden the dude's on the ground, like the rim's been torn off the backboards. I'm obviously being very like over the top, but you know what I mean. Like it's way different. It's way different.
Like, have you seen all those videos of like all the high schoolers in America like snapping like rims off the glass all the time and the glass shattering?
Have you ever seen that in person? Because I've never seen that happen.
I've never seen it happen in person, but every time I see it happen, it's always in the US.
Man, their backboards ain't right.
It's either that or they're just all freaks.
I mean, yeah, that too.
Yeah, because I don't know how that. Yeah, I just don't know, man, how that happens. Like, yeah, like I did learn something interesting actually while I was over there. Tom and I learned something interesting while we were over there. So like, it's rare to find a rim 10 foot over there. They're almost always lower, and they consider 9, 10 and a half, 10 foot. They would call that 10 foot or like a full height rim, right? And what I learned is it's like that because they put the rim in first and then surface the court afterwards. So that's why there's so much inconsistency with the rim height, right? Whereas apparently here in Australia, we do the opposite. And that's why there's way more consistency in terms of the rim heights here. In terms of
So,
them being 10 foot.
so all of like your pretty much all of your hoops are like consistently like 10 foot.
It's super rare to find one under. They're always 10 foot or if they're not 10 foot, they're higher.
Wow, that's interesting because what I found, and like I've been to so many, I guess, different hoops like all over like New Zealand now, so I can kind of like give an accurate like description of it, but pretty much the same as in America, like for us. Like it is very rare for a hoop to be 10 foot. unless it's like a professional game, and they've obviously like made sure of that. But
Yeah.
all of the local gyms in my region, like they're either slightly above or they're slightly below. There are some rims here, and like I don't get the luxury of being able to practice on them, even though I'd love to. But like some high schools here, there's probably about like two or three I can think of. Like I haven't got a tape measure out, but some of them are pretty close to being less than 9 foot. And these teams are playing on them. And I'm not even exaggerating. Like there's one school that's like, and I mean, I get that probably like because I've played at some of them before, but I've played at quite a few of them in like different states. So, like I've been playing a basketball game, I've had a good warm up, I've been like, not fatigued or anything like that. And then I've been there when I haven't even been intending on doing a jump session. I've just been coaching. So I've been there and like, yeah, I reckon like a lot of them, these particular ones I'm thinking of, are between like 9.2 and like 9.7. Like it's ridiculous. But it's crazy because like the kids that I know who go to those schools, who train at those schools, they're also some of the most athletic basketball players in the region, like from what I've seen. As in, I'm speaking from the perspective of like being able to like dunk, and they're not just tall either. So maybe it's like, oh, okay, they've had so much low rim practice in that kind of low stimulating environment, but then when they go to like playing a game in front of a big crowd and it's like important and it's 10 foot, it's pretty much like it like balances out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we literally all our rooms here are like barely any of them are 10 foot on the dot.
That's insane. That's insane. Just goes to show how important low rimming is, you know? Like not only low rimming, but like the low rimming while still jumping maximally.
Yeah. Yeah. Having the intent behind it, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I think that's a super underrated stimulus to improve your vertical, is doing that. Just having low rim sessions, but not low rim sessions, not jumping maximally, still jumping maximally. So, like, I know, like, you hear stories about all the best in the world. Like, that's often how they started. There's this new guy that's popped up. Shit, what's his name? The guy that went to the Texas dunk camp, Tom. Donovan Hawkins. Donovan
Oh,
Hawkins.
Yeah.
oh, yeah. No, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
That man is like the most disgusting dunker I have seen.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, like same. And like I've heard his story on like an Instagram short about how he improved his vertical. And most of the story was he just dunked on low rims for years, and then one day he just went to 10 foot, and then it was crazy. Could do all the same dunks. So
It's mental, man. Yeah. And
yeah,
like I'm not surprised about that either, because like he he has so much like style, and like his hand speed is also crazy. And because he's like decently tall too, right? He's like 6'7" or something.
no, he's like 6'4", I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, far out. I mean, that's probably just other
No,
people.
he is 6'7". I'm pretty
What?
sure.
Are you
Yeah,
sure?
yeah, I swear I've seen like
Bro,
he's
what?
been on like Dunkademics and stuff, and they've been like 6'7" Donovan Hawkins.
Six
But like,
seven? Bro, I thought, bro, what?
I mean, he's probably like 6'5" or 6'6". Like that's probably shoe measurement. Sorry, NBA measurement.
Bro,
But
that's insane.
yeah,
But
like
still, he doesn't
yeah,
look that tall.
what was that?
He doesn't look that tall in video.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
That's another interesting topic, actually.
What?
People's proportions, like how, like for myself, I feel like I look 7 foot in video, but then there's another guy on JumpX that's the exact same height as me, has an even taller reach, and he looks way shorter than me in video, you know? So I don't know. I just find that interesting as well. And then like if Donovan Hawkins is like 6'7", but I would have thought he was like 6'3", 6'4".
Mm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. It wasn't until I saw like a recent video, and it might have been actually at the Texas dunk camp, or it was, yeah, something. I'm pretty sure it was that particular dunk session, and like the intro of the video was him like standing under the hoop and like reaching his hand up, and I was like, oh yeah, he looks tall, but like totally like didn't discredit like the dunks he was able to do, because like even considering that, like he probably has long arms too. So like for any sort of trick dunks, whether that's like under both, like behind the back, just a simple East Bay, like he's obviously got to take that ball through a greater circumference. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
It's like a guy at 6'7" squatting 200. Like that's insane.
exactly, exactly. People don't understand that, eh? But
Yeah,
it's our job.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to touch on. Was there anything else you guys wanted to touch on?
I mean, good spot to leave it.
So I'm
Thanks for
holding a piss here.
huh?
I'm holding in a piss here. I really need to piss. I'm about to burst.
Man's desperate.
Yeah.
No, that was cool. I feel like we covered quite a wide basis of topics. Um, no, had a great time, gentlemen. Appreciate you guys having me on.
No, thank you for coming on, man. It was a pleasure having you on, and thank you for taking the time to come on. I feel like it was a super interesting podcast.
Yeah, no, hopefully, yeah, hopefully people take what they want from it.
Yeah. Where we should have done this at the start, but where can people follow you and find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. My handle is power and prowess, so that's power underscore and underscore prowess. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much the main place that you'll get me. So yeah.
Awesome. And also, if you guys are looking to jump higher, improve your vertical, check out our Instagram at JumpX Performance Coaching and click the link in our bio. You can apply for coaching there. And without further ado, we'll catch you guys in the next podcast.
Bye.
See you, gentlemen.